Hey guys, in this lesson we're going to cover the 3 easiest minor chords to play on guitar. We're also going to cover what minor chords are, the difference between major chords and minor chords, and how you can even identify that by the sound of them. Which should be fairly straightforward because your minor chords sound sad. And these are the 3 minor chords we're going to learn. We're going to learn E minor, A minor, and D minor. And you can hear at all of those chords they kind of sound sad. A lot of people think that major chords kind of sound happy, and that's kind of the difference, but often it can be quite difficult to distinguish a major chord when there's no other reference to it, or if there's just a sequence of major chords. They don't always sound happy, they just kind of sound like standard chords. If we kind of hear E major, A major and D major, there's kind of no personality to them. They all just sound like a standard chord. They're kind of bland. And minor chords, if I play any other minor chord at all, they would all sound distinctly very sad. Okay, so that's kind of the idea of them. And if music is an expression of emotion, then kind of happy and sad are the 2 extremes. And then we blend your major and minor chords to create your songs. And there's a couple of song examples that I'm going to show you in other videos of songs that you can play using just these minor chords, but there aren't many. I'm certainly not going to do 10 because they're so sad. So there's not many good ones that use just minor chords. But there is a relationship between them. If you've seen my other videos, you will have learnt E, A and D major. And I did 10 songs with those 3 chords. So to start off with, I would like you to play an E major chord the standard way that I've shown you in all your other videos. And this, if you followed these videos in order, this should have been the first chord that you ever learnt. So you should be able to do this by now. And to play your E minor, there's a very simple way to do it. You just take off your first finger. And that is your E minor. I would prefer you to use your first 2 fingers rather than your middle 2. So currently you should be using fingers 2 and finger 3. If you swap finger 2 for finger 1, put your second finger directly underneath it, it will sound exactly the same. But for a lot of the chord changes that we encounter, that should really help that fingering position. So if we go back to our E major, it kind of sounds happy or standard chord, a normal chord, and then your E minor sounds distinctly sad. It has that personality to it because it's a minor chord. The relationship between those is, certainly in these 3 that I'm about to show you now, the lowest finger of the 3, which here is your first finger, has to go down, which is this way, by 1 fret. And in this case, it's already on the first fret, so you just lift it off. And that's the difference between E major and E minor. And that's going to be consistent for all these 3 major chords, from the major chord to the minor version of that chord. And it's pretty consistent for any other chords that we look at, because a lot of other chords actually borrow this E, A and D major shape. For example, bar chords, the same thing happens to go from a major bar chord to a minor bar chord. So that for the people that have covered an F chord before, this is your F bar chord, and it's basically an E major shape with my first finger acting like a capo. And if we take our middle finger off from that E major shape, it becomes an E minor shape, and guess what? It sounds sad. So that, remembering that it's the lowest finger of the 3, can come in really handy. So just one more time, E major. For the super easy way, first finger off, and that's an E minor. But the way that I prefer you to use it is with your first 2 fingers. The next chord we're going to learn is an A minor. And an A minor uses the same shape as the E major chord, but we're on different strings. So if you play me your E major chord one more time, and then we're going to move all your fingers down from exactly where they are, just move them all down 1 string. So everything moves down, and that, if we play all the strings just to start with, that is your A minor chord. Now we need to really make sure, especially on this A minor chord, that all your strings are ringing out, because this second string, where your first finger is the note that makes this chord sound sad. If we just compare it to the A major chord for 1 second, that would be either 3 in a line, or the way that I've taught it in previous videos, like this, you'll be familiar with. And then it's the bottom one of the 3, which is, for either way you play this chord, that's where your third finger is. That one goes down by 1 fret, and then if you go from the major to the minor, we have to kind of rejig your fingers a little bit, but the other 2 are in the same place, they're pressing down the same notes as they were on the A major chord. So all the other notes are exactly the same, just that one has moved down. Now if we can't hear that note, there's kind of no point in learning these minor chords, to be honest with you. If it sounds like this, it doesn't sound sad, it's got no personality to it. We need to make sure those top 2 strings, the B and the open E, really ring out, and then you'll get the full benefit of these minor chords. So it's the same shape as the E major, but as I say, you're on different strings. Now the way to memorize that one is different to the other, and to still know which chord you're on when you have a bigger palette of chords, when you know more chords than just 2 or 3, is to remember where the bass note is. Now the bass note is the note that gives the chord its name. For example, E or the A chord. It's also known as a root note, and it's what the bass player, if I was playing in my band and I'm playing an E chord, I'm rocking out, my bass player in my band would be playing just the thickest E string, because that is the lowest note that we want heard in an E chord. Why it's called an E chord, we need that in the bass, in the low end. On an A chord, no matter whether we're playing an A major or an A minor, we want the A string or the 5th string to be the bass note, so we don't want the E to be heard. And when you look at your chord hand, if you're playing this E major shape and you can only see 1 string above where your fingers are, then you're on an E major. If you can see 2 strings above where your fingers are, then you know you're on an A minor, because we've got your A string open, so we can hear that one. So ideally we don't want to hear that thickest E string, so you'll want to strum from that 5th string, from your A string, but that's kind of as a secondary point to making sure that your top 2 strings ring out great. These thin ones really need to be ringing out most of the time, the vast majority of the time. If you're within a song and they don't a couple of times, don't beat yourself up about it. But yes, it's just kind of knowing what chord you're on at this point. So the 2 new ones that we've learnt so far, E minor, first 2 fingers, sounds like that. And then if you move your E major shape down 1 string, we get an A minor, and that one also sounds sad. If we move this A minor shape down 1 more time, 1 more string, we're on the thinnest strings now, the 3 thinnest strings, and we just need to kick out your 3rd finger 1 more fret. Now this makes it a much harder stretch, and this is by far and away the hardest chord out of these 3. This one's quite difficult. So we want your 3rd finger to be on the 3rd fret. 2nd finger 2nd fret, 1st finger still at the 1st fret, and they're on all the same strings, we've just scooched it over by 1 fret. Now the further over to you it is within this fret, the less you will have to press down. If you're over at this side, to get that note to ring out right, you have to really press it down quite a lot. But if it's over this side, trust me, you don't have to press down that much. But it doesn't make it substantially easier at the start. What will make it a lot easier is if you have the back of your hand, you see that, the palm of your hand very close to the guitar. So basically hug the back of it, have the neck coming in here, and that will hopefully make it a lot easier to have your fingers in the correct places. if your fingers are also on an angle, kind of pointing towards your right shoulder, kind of like this, that can make it an awful lot easier as well. If you can do it with your thumb at the back more like this, and it still rings out great, then even better, but some people really struggle doing that way of doing a D minor especially. Again, just to compare it to the D major, it's actually just that bottom one of the three that's gone down by 1 fret, and the other 2 notes are in exactly the same place, so we have a major sound and a minor sound. Okay? So the same idea is congruent for all those chords. Also, we ideally, as I say, want to strum it from the D note, so we have D minor, but practically it's absolutely fine if you have the A note ringing out in a D major or minor chord as well, because an A is part of a D chord, so it's not too strict. That sounds totally fine. If you have the thickest E string going on a D minor chord, kind of sounds a bit terrible, so try not to do that. Aiming low is the best way. Moving 1 string up again, we have your A minor chord that we just did, should sound like that, and then the first one that we did with your first 2 fingers, E minor there again. And we're going to be using these, as I say, in a couple of songs. You do have 1 anchor finger that you can use if you play it the way that I've just shown you. Between E minor and A minor, you can keep your middle finger down. So E minor to A minor, that change, you can keep your middle finger down without lifting it off. Very strange to do at first, because we'll just be used to keeping that first finger down, but very handy when you're first getting used to doing it, and that's going to be a big part of one of the first songs that we're going to look at, Ain't No Sunshine. That's practically the riff that we're going to be looking at in the next video. There is no anchor finger or really any help I can give you to help with the changes between E minor and D minor and any chord to a D minor. It is a harder chord. If you drill it, if you just change between one chord to the other, it will improve, and all your chord changes will improve, but it doesn't make it easier. It is tough. Keep at it and just concentrate on the A minor, E minor bit first. And that's the relationship between your major and minor chords, and all the minor chords that you'll need for the rest of this kind of beginner's course that I've set up for you. As I say, because the minor chords sound sad, there aren't many songs that they get used in exclusively. So songs tend not to have just minor chords in them, but 1 or 2 may crop up at some point in the songs that we look at, and therefore it's really handy. And as I say, you want to get used to the way that these sound. So if a song sounds sad, that's usually because it's got a couple of minor chords in it, or maybe just minor chords. So check out the next couple of videos with a couple of songs that you can use with these minor chords, and then you can mix and match them as you go and see which ones sound good together. Thanks for checking out this video on how to master your minor chords. Please subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you like what I do.